This is Taha.
This is Anaina,
This is Movie Masala.
and we're here to yap at you about films we've watched recently.
And today we're doing
Five Broken Cameras by Emad Burnat and Guy Davidi.
في مرة إجا مهندس إسرائيلي يعمل كاسات عشان يبنوا جدار فاصل في وسط أرضنا. في هذا اليوم انكسرت كاميرتي الأولى بقنبلة غاز.
Okay, so this film was assigned to me for one of my viewings for a class, which is why I watched it. It's from 2013. It's free available to watch on YouTube. And basically, it's about Emad Burnat, a Palestinian man, recording and filming his life under an occupied West Bank between the years of, I think, 2004, 2005, and up until like 2010, 2011. It's called Five Broken Cameras because all the footage from it was pieced together from these five different cameras. Because each of his camera was broken by the soldiers in some way or the other. And so the footage that we are seeing is literally footage that was destroyed in some way, or they don't want us to watch it, basically. And it's still there. So the film in itself is a form of resistance.
an act of rebellion in some way.
Exactly, which is what makes it so interesting. And I mean, Guy Davidi is leftist Israeli filmmaker as well. And, you know, when a film is made, especially in current times, when a film is made with a Palestinian and an Israeli in conjunction, kind of tend to get a little wary about how sanitized it's going to be, about its depiction of the Palestinian genocide, occupation, and general oppression, right? But at the very beginning of the film, we are told that this is Burnat's film. This is not Davidi's film. This is Burnat's film. This is Burnat's story. And Davidi is just there to help facilitate it. He is not there to tell it. He is not there to put in a different perspective in it. And that really comes through in the film. Like, saying that is easy, but it really comes through in the film when we see it is about Burnat's life and Burnat's family and his resistance as part of his village, Bilein, in the West Bank, and how they kind of fought back, the entire community fought back against the illegal settlers kind of taking up more and more of their land. Like, there's a bunch of quotes that I picked up from this film that kind of really stick with you. But the one or two things that I want to talk about is, first of all, that he bought the camera. The first camera comes when his fourth child is born. And
Imad's fourth child.
Imad's fourth child, yes, Gibrail. The story kind of goes forward as Gibrail grows up, and so does the resistance. And so the film kind of is a love letter, or is for Gibrail. That's what I thought of it. Because for Gibrail to watch when he grows up, which I guess be now, and remember his father's resistance and his own resistance. Because if the film spends a lot of the time focusing on how Gibrail is growing up with the growing violence and growing resistance around him, and Emad takes Gibrail and the rest of his sons to the demonstrations against the Israeli settlers as well. And there's this one moment in the film where, after the first one, a 3-year-old Gibrail has been taken to the demonstration. And when they come back, he's telling his mom, the soldiers were everywhere. They were like shooting and they were firing gas or something, but I was not afraid. And his mom goes, "You weren't afraid?" And he goes, "I was not afraid." And I think it's just so poignant and touching that a 3-year-old is able to say that, and a 3-year-old is able to like understand what is going on around him. And Emad is very insistent on having his children be a part of the world around them. And he says at one point that the only resistance so Emad, can give him and his children is letting them see everything with their own eyes. And so that they see the vulnerability of life, so that they see death, so that they see joy, so that they see resistance, they see suffering, they see everything, so that whatever they're feeling, they're able to express it well. And that brings me to my second point, which is this major theme of the movie, which is the loss of childhood, which is something very important. Because if the film is about his children, it is also about how his children and the Palestinians lose their childhood at such an early age because of how involved they have to be in the resistance,
Oh, wow.
which
Yeah.
inherently means being angry all of the time. And so he talks about, to be able to resist at that level, there has to be some anger in you. And after seeing all the death and suffering and like injustice around you, there has to be an anger within you. And that means you lose out on your childhood because children aren't inherently angry, right? And so I think that's one of the things Emad is trying to tell us as well, is that Palestinians lose their childhood so easy. They have to grow up and become men and women, even when they're still boys and girls and children. He talks about knowing what to do with the anger. Because if you let it fester within yourself, I mean, this is something that comes up in a lot of Palestinian media as well.
Yeah.
Which is, if you let the anger within yourself fester, it's going to become ugly. So kind of this way of demonstrating, protesting in violent ways, not in non-violent ways only, is a way of letting your anger out, letting the injustice of what is done to you, your people, and your land especially come out. And this is one point where Gibrail, like a 4-year-old Gibrail, asks Emad, what happens if you stab a soldier with a knife? And Emad goes, well, he'll shoot me. And then he asks Gibrail, why do you want to hurt them? And Gibrail responds, because he killed my Phil. And Phil is kind of this person who, from the village, who used to be amazing with children. His spirit was really vicarious. And we've just found out at this point in the film that he was shot. Or shown actually, him being shot by the IDF. And so that child is able to understand that someone has been taken away from him. And then Gibrail goes on to say that because they killed my Phil and because they've taken my land. A 4-year-old is able to understand what the loss of land, what the loss of homeland means. And I think showing both the demonstrations. So Emad takes a camera. That's how his cameras get broken, basically. He's at these demonstrations and the camera gets shot at. He gets shot at and the camera comes in the way. Or the camera is like pushed away or broken by soldiers physically, like with their hands. We have clips from demonstrations. We have clips from his family life. We have clips from the villagers and their communities. I felt the moments that stuck out to me most were when he was filming his children and we were seeing their resistance and kind of their impact on each other as a family.
Yeah, that all sounds incredibly poignant and very moving. I'm also curious as to, I can see that the film's from Emad's perspective and he is the voice of the film, basically. I'm curious to hear what Guy Davidi, you think's role is in the film and how he facilitates it. And specifically his Israeli identity, how that factors in, if that's something you feel is strongly within the film as well.
So we never really see Davidi except for at the beginning when he's like prefacing the film. But you can tell that this is a story that wants to include everyone who is on the side of the Palestinian cause. Because in the film, Emad at multiple times mentions that there were Spaniards, there were French people, there were Italians, and there were Israelis from the like around the village in the West Bank, who were on the side of the resistance, who were protesting. And I think it comes across distinctly when the IDF shoots at the demonstrators and multiple times they wound and injure Israeli people. And the Palestinian demonstrators kind of make that known. They shout it across at the soldiers, at the IDF, that the person you just shot is an Israeli citizen. So I think it does make known that there are Israeli people who are on the side of the resistance. But I feel like that's not the point of the film. The point of the film is that Emad and his family and his community and kind of the resistance of the Palestinian people is so prominent and it's so powerful that despite first being shot at, being subject to a lot of violence, to a lot of injustice, and then the legal court finally taking their side, but it taking around 5-6 years to actually result in some action and still persisting. I think that's the point of the film. And the point where I think Davidi comes in is to show that there is solidarity.
I feel also with everything, it feels like Davidi is in that case showcasing also the role of allies in that conversation of not taking charge of the conversation, not directing the conversation, but rather facilitating the voices who are the people that are within that conflict and like uplifting them and being in the background, trying to be as much as in the background while doing that. Because again, this is a film inherent in its concept is showing how just recording and just like sharing these stories and sharing this pain, suffering, and trauma, just cultural trauma, is a form of resistance in itself, because the 5 broken cameras is clearly highlighting how the oppressor, the Israeli government in that case, the oppressor is clearly against that, clearly does not want you to do that. So even the act of just recording and just facilitating that, just sharing of the trauma, is inherently rebellious and is a form of resistance in that manner.
Exactly. So yeah, I thought this was a great film. No wonder it won an Academy Award.
Incredible.
I do not think it would win an Academy Award today, but that's a conversation for a different time. But yeah, those are all my thoughts. I mean, I have a lot more thoughts, but we're on a limited time here. So
So those are our thoughts. I will link this documentary, since it's on YouTube, in the show notes, so you can feel free to go to the link there and watch it from there. This has been our thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. This podcast is produced solely by us, musical assets from Pixabay. Thank you for listening. See you again soon.
bye-bye.